He still knocks. Dricus du Plessis down under defends his UFC middleweight championship. And no split decision this time. Unanimous decision. All he does is win on an 11-fight win streak, undefeated in the UFC at 9-0. And for more, welcome in CBS Sports combat analyst Brian Campbell. Dricus du Plessis defends his middleweight title against Strickland. No split decision. It's unanimous, BC. Du Plessis breaks Strickland's nose in the fourth round. That was incredible. What a punch.
What a punch. Indeed. What a complete fighter is really the story here from this South African champion who we all remember when he first made his UFC debut. He was clowned at times for being a little bit bumbling in terms of big body, big power. But what about that delivery system? But fight for fight, he has improved. You saw the difference. If you look back at the first fight against Strickland, as you mentioned, you could have scored that 3-2 either way in a very close technical thriller. You didn't see that this time around. You saw a one-sided performance from du Plessis. Couple of close rounds early, of course, because Sean Strickland is hard to hit cleanly. We know he gets on top of you with that pressure. But how about the full offense of du Plessis, who did score one takedown, which was a big part of when he defeated Strickland the first time, but did not rely on the grappling in this fight. He was just the better striker. He was busier. He landed the bigger shots. If you didn't respect this guy coming in, you will now. He's one of the top champions in the sport.
Well, we know that Sean Strickland added Alex Pereira to his corner, and I'm sure he had some sort of wise advice for him. Or maybe not. Do you think that helped him? What do you think that meant to Sean Strickland?
I mean, look, this time around with Poatan in the corner, remember, right? Pereira had once knocked Strickland out. We thought this could be the difference maker because as good as Strickland is at hitting and not getting hit, they score damage in this sport. So we knew Strickland was certainly going to have to bring a new offensive mindset to the table, maybe sit down on his shots more. We just didn't see that. And if you had a feel watching this fight for Coach Eric Nixick of Extreme Couture in this corner, pleading with Strickland after each round to be busier. You're running out of time. We need to be dramatic. We need a finish. Strickland certainly persevered through that broken nose in midway through round 4. Him fighting out the last 8 minutes is just speaks well to his toughness for sure. But we didn't see any changes in Strickland's game where it was du Plessis who constantly is evolving and improving. Strickland is a very well-respected fighter and certainly one of the 15 best in this game. But he had nothing for Dricus du Plessis on this night. If you can't hurt the champion and you're not going to outwork him, it's going to be hard to get your hand raised.
All du Plessis does is win. 11-fight win streak, undefeated in the UFC at 9-0. So what is next for He Still Knocks?
It's got to be Khamzat Chimaev. And look, if any MMA fan will tell you, it probably should have been Chimaev this evening. It was a little surprising that the UFC went the direction of giving Strickland a rematch after his own split decision win over Paulo Costa coming off of that title loss. But this is the real matchup in a very top-heavy, star-studded division. We just saw Israel Adesanya take another loss as this division is changing skin, so to speak. But what we have in Chimaev is a dominant wrestler out of Chechnya and Russia, a guy who has been somewhat of an uncrowned champion ever since he made his debut mid-pandemic for the UFC and went on to absolutely dominate across 2 divisions. Now it's time to match those grappling skills against the offense, the size, the power. How about the IQ and the mindset of what the champion Dricus du Plessis brings to the table? Expect a very close betting odds on this one coming in and expect possibly the toughest challenge of DDP's already impressive run atop this division.
Du Plessis defends his middleweight title, defeats Sean Strickland via unanimous decision. Title on the line in the co-main event. After an underwhelming round 1, Zhang Weili responded in a big way, winning the next 4 rounds as she defeats Tatiana Suarez, also via unanimous decision. BC, what did you see after the slow start from Weili as she defends her strawweight title for the 3rd time?
I think I may have seen the greatest strawweight fighter in UFC history here on the women's side, and that's Zhang Weili. I was one of these people who picked Suarez not only to win, but to win dominantly, because through 11 pro fights, that's all we had known of Tatiana Suarez, who did bring incredible toughness to this fight and really was a credit to that toughness that she went the distance. But despite a good human interest story coming in for Suarez's long perseverance through a very injury-riddled career, she lost 4 years at her prime in 2019, and she took this fight coming off an 18-month layoff due to more unexpected injuries. But after scoring a takedown in round 1 against Weili Zhang, it was the takedown defense of the Chinese champion that really put Suarez in a corner. Ineffective on her feet with striking, Suarez continued to take punishment over time. But it was not only the takedown defense. How about Suarez getting taken down for the first time in her career by Zhang in round 3? This was an absolutely dominant performance for a champion who's been on top now twice in this division, scored the 4th title defense of what is now her 2nd reign. And outside of a pair of 2021 title losses to Rose Namajunas, Weili Zhang is now, 10-0 against everybody else not named Namajunas. You're seeing an absolutely dominant champion at age 35 who's getting better each fight. All we talked about was the grappling of Suarez coming in, and all we're talking about is the dominance of Zhang coming out.
Yeah, Weili has won 5 straight fights since back-to-back losses to Rose Namajunas. So what's next for Weili? Who are you putting in front of her?
Well, it's interesting because, the UFC has wanted to get Mackenzie Dern into a title fight for a long time as she's juggled wins and losses every other time. But I think this is actually the end of Zhang Weili's run at 115 pounds, or at least the opening of a new door, and that's moving up in weight, trying to become a 2-division champion. Zhang Weili said this week in an interview with Michael Bisping that she expected to already have fought for the title at 125, but it was an injury to champion Valentina Shevchenko. We know that Manon Fiorot probably should be next at 125 after Shevchenko regained her title last fall against Alexa Grasso. But if the UFC wanted to pause that, sub in Weili, you'd be looking at a literal fight for the #1 pound-for-pound spot on the female side in mixed martial arts, and obviously within the UFC. Weili Zhang deserves it after the run she's been on, and this would be a star-studded, historic matchup. Let's see which direction the UFC decides to go.
We wait to see about that. You mentioned Tatiana Suarez taken down for the first time in a UFC fight. She suffers the first loss in her professional career. You wrote about how this fight was now or never for Suarez. Where does she go from here?
It's all about staying healthy for Suarez. She's 34 years old, but as we said, has missed so many fights in her career. I believe she had something like 7 UFC appearances in 9 years, which really speaks to the difficulty that she's had to deal with. But she didn't get here by accident. Overcoming cancer, which pulled her from the 2012 Olympic trials. This is a former high school wrestler of the year. This is somebody who's overcome so much. Could we still see Suarez contend for a title in this division? I say yes, especially with the possibility that Weili Zhang could be moving up, or at least could be entertaining a run at 125 if she tries to juggle 2 championships. Either way, I think you see Suarez back in a title fight, but it's 100% dependent upon her staying healthy, and whether it's knee injuries, a recurring neck injury that has kept her down, or just the fact that she pulled out of 2 fights in 2024 alone and sat out 18 months coming into tonight. This is a hard luck story at the end of what was already a hard luck story. But what we do know about the fighter and Tatiana Suarez is just that. She's a fighter. I believe she'll be back.
Brian Campbell recapping the title fights at UFC 312. BC, appreciate you. And coming up next month, UFC 313 from Las Vegas, headlined by Alex Pereira, clashing with Magomed Ankalaev. Pereira putting his UFC light heavyweight championship on the line. Pereira has won each of his last 4 fights via knockout. In the co-main event, must-see TV, it's Justin Gaethje against Dan Hooker in a lightweight bout. Could be an absolute banger. And for comprehensive combat coverage, keep it locked to CBSSports.com and CBS Sports HQ.